They thought they had already found the most remarkable thing underground Turkey was ever going to yield. They were wrong. When scientists returned to the ancient subterranean city beneath the Cappadocia region of central Turkey, equipped with scanning technology that did not exist when the site was first explored, what they found waiting beneath layers of carved stone and compacted sediment was not a confirmation of what they already believed. It was a series of discoveries so far outside the boundaries of the existing explanation that the researchers who documented them left the site with more open questions than they had arrived with. The mystery of Derinkuyu, one of the deepest, most complex, and most architecturally sophisticated underground cities ever found anywhere on Earth, did not get solved when science went back to look harder. It got worse. And the questions it leaves behind cut to the very center of what we think we know about the capabilities, the timeline, and the true history of ancient human civilization. Derinkuyu sits beneath an unremarkable stretch of the Cappadocian Plateau in central Anatolia, in a region of Turkey where the landscape itself already seems to defy conventional expectation. The surface of Cappadocia is defined by extraordinary geological formations called fairy chimneys, tall, narrow pillars of volcanic tuff carved by millions of years of erosion into shapes that look more like something from a fever dream than a geological process. The rock beneath the surface here is soft, easy to carve, and naturally insulating, maintaining a near constant temperature year-round regardless of the often brutal extremes of the surface climate above. These properties made the rock attractive to whoever first thought to go underground, and whoever that was, they did not simply dig a room or cellar, they built an entire world beneath the earth. Derinkuyu was rediscovered in 1963 in circumstances that have become one of the most frequently repeated stories in the archaeology of the ancient Near East. A local man renovating his house broke through a wall in his basement and found a room beyond it, and beyond that room, another. And beyond that, a passage descending further down and then further still, branching and widening and opening into chambers and corridors and stairwells, carved with a precision and intentionality that made it immediately clear this was not a natural cave system. It was a built environment, constructed by people who knew exactly what they were doing, and did it at a scale that has never been matched anywhere else on Earth. Turkish authorities and archaeologists began systematic excavation and mapping of the site shortly afterward, and what they found exceeded every expectation they brought to the dig. The portion of Derinkuyu that has been officially excavated and open to the public descends 18 stories below ground level, reaching a depth of approximately 85 meters. It contains enough space to have housed and sustained an estimated 20,000 people, with dedicated areas that have been identified as stables, wineries, oil presses, kitchens, communal dining areas, chapels, and even a large barrel-vaulted room on the second level that researchers believe functioned as a religious school. There are ventilation shafts, over 50 of them in the explored portion alone, drilled vertically through 85 meters of solid rock to bring fresh air to the deepest levels. The largest of these shafts is 55 meters deep and is believed to have also functioned as a well. There is a sophisticated water distribution system connecting multiple underground water sources, and at each major level, there are massive stone wheels, disc-shaped boulders cut to fit the passageways precisely, that could be rolled across corridors from the inside, sealing entire sections of the city against anyone attempting to force entry from above. Those stone doors are themselves a subject of sustained fascination among researchers. Each one is carved to exactly fit its corresponding passageway, with a small hole through the center that allowed defenders inside to observe the sealed corridor or to use a spear or implement through the gap, while the stone remained rolled shut against potential attackers. The engineering precision required to cut a stone disc perfectly matched to a specific corridor, while also ensuring it could be moved smoothly on the uneven floor of a rock-cut passage, is not primitive. It reflects a working understanding of tolerances, forces, and mechanical principles that many popular accounts of Neolithic and early Bronze Age human capability simply do not account for. The officially accepted historical explanation places Derinkuyu's construction and primary use in the Byzantine period, roughly the 7th to 10th centuries AD, when the Christian populations of Cappadocia faced repeated threats from Arab raids and later from other regional military pressures. Under this model, the underground city was a refuge, a place to disappear with animals, food, water, and religious objects until the danger on the surface passed. The Christians who sheltered here carved the chapels, inscribed the walls with religious symbols, and built the winery and food storage facilities that enabled long-term habitation during sieges that could last weeks or months. This explanation is tidy, well documented in Byzantine historical sources, and consistent with the known archaeology of the wider Cappadocia region, which contains hundreds of underground shelters, rock-cut churches, and cave dwellings from the Byzantine period. The problem is that it does not fully explain Derinkuyu, and when the team of researchers returned to the site with modern ground-penetrating radar systems, thermal imaging equipment, and three-dimensional mapping technology, The gap between the accepted explanation and the physical reality carved into the rock beneath Cappadocia grew wider rather than narrower. The first and most destabilizing finding of the new survey was not at the bottom of the excavated levels, it was below them. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of the areas beneath the currently explored and open sections of Derinkuyu produced images of additional structural features extending further downward than anything previously mapped. Chambers, passages, voids in the rock with the organized geometric profile of cut spaces rather than the irregular profile of natural cavities or erosion features. The underground city, the one that was already considered one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites in the world before anyone returned with modern scanning equipment, does not end where the excavations end. It continues. How far down it continues, what it contains, and what function the deeper levels served are questions that the radar data has raised and that no excavation has yet answered, because the deeper portions of the site have not been entered by any modern researcher. This single finding restructures the question of Derinkuyu's purpose entirely. A refuge from Byzantine-era raids requires living space, food storage, water, ventilation, and defensible entrances. It does not obviously require 85 meters of depth already confirmed, plus an unknown additional depth indicated by the new scans. The deepest confirmed levels of Derinkuyu are cold, dark, difficult to access, and far below any practical threshold for the kind of emergency communal shelter that the Byzantine period explanation describes. Something about the design intention of this city pushed its builders downward, far beyond what simple refuge logic demands, for reasons that the standard model has never cleanly explained. The ventilation system is another element that does not fully resolve under the existing explanation when examined closely. The 50-plus ventilation shafts that keep the lower levels of Derinkuyu supplied with fresh air are not simple holes punched vertically through the rock. They are engineered systems, sized and positioned to create airflow patterns that distribute fresh air through the inhabited levels while allowing stale air to move upward and out. The calculation of where to place these shafts, how large to make them at each level, and how to position the inhabited spaces relative to them to maintain livable air quality at a depth of 85 meters reflects a working knowledge of airflow dynamics that is not intuitive and cannot be arrived at through trial and error without catastrophic consequences for the people living in the deeper levels during the construction process. Someone who built Derinkuyu understood, at a functional engineering level, how air moves through enclosed underground spaces at significant depth. Where that understanding came from, whether it was accumulated over generations of smaller scale underground construction elsewhere, or developed through a process we have not yet identified, is not something the historical record clearly explains. The water system raises similar questions. Derinkuyu is not dry. It has access to underground water sources that its builders tapped and distributed through the inhabited levels. The positioning of the city relative to these water sources was not accidental. The builders knew the water was there before they started digging, or they acquired the knowledge of its location during the earliest phases of construction and oriented the subsequent expansion of the city accordingly. Either way, the integration of water access into the architecture of a space that eventually housed 20,000 people at depths that make drilling and carving enormously difficult represents a level of pre-planning and geological knowledge that exceeds what a purely reactive refugee city construction model would predict. When researchers mapped the tunnel system connecting Derinkuyu to the surrounding region, another layer of complexity emerged that the existing explanation handles awkwardly. Derinkuyu is not an isolated underground structure. It is connected to other underground cities in the Cappadocian region by a network of tunnels, some of which extend for kilometers beneath the surface. The most famous of these connections links Derinkuyu to the underground city of Kaymakli, 8 kilometers to the north. The tunnel was large enough, according to historical accounts and early exploration records, for people to walk through, though much of it has collapsed or become impassable since its original construction. The scale of construction implied by a tunnel network connecting multiple large underground cities across 8 kilometers of solid rock is not a small or opportunistic undertaking. It is a regional infrastructure project, requiring coordinated planning, sustained labor investment, and a shared purpose across a geographic area large enough to encompass multiple communities and multiple generations of builders. The new scanning surveys added to this picture by identifying additional tunnel connections previously unknown, extending in directions that do not align with any of the currently mapped underground cities in the region. Where those tunnels lead, whether they connect to other large underground complexes not yet discovered or whether they serve some other function entirely, is one of the genuinely open questions that the re-examination of Derinkuyu has put squarely on the table without providing any clear answer. The question of the original builders is where the archaeological debate becomes most pointed and where the gap between the accepted explanation and the full body of evidence is most difficult to bridge cleanly. The Byzantine Christians who used Derinkuyu in the medieval period did not build the core of the city. Historical sources, archaeological stratigraphy, and the analysis of the carved surfaces throughout the complex all support the conclusion that the Christians moved into and expanded a structure that already existed, one that predated their occupation by a significant margin. Hittite artifacts have been found in and around the Cappadocian underground sites, and the Hittites, who dominated central Anatolia from roughly 1600 to 1200 BCE, are one of the candidate groups suggested for some of the earlier construction phases. The Phrygians, who succeeded the Hittites in this region, are another. References to underground cities in ancient texts from the region suggest that the existence of large subterranean complexes was known and culturally significant in Anatolia long before the Byzantine period. But the deeper problem, the one that the new scanning data has made more acute rather than less, is that tracing the construction of Derinkuyi's deepest levels to any specific historical culture requires that culture to have possessed the engineering knowledge, the organizational capacity, and the sustained purpose to build something at a scale and depth that has no clear parallel in the known archaeological record of any culture in the ancient Near East during any period. There is no ancient Anatolian culture in the accepted historical timeline that has been convincingly shown to have built large underground complexes as primary infrastructure rather than as small-scale refuges or storage facilities. Derinkuyu is not a scaled-up version of something that appears in miniature elsewhere in the ancient record. It is, in its scale and its engineering sophistication, a genuine outlier that does not fit comfortably into any existing category of ancient construction. The thermal imaging surveys conducted during the most recent examination of the site added one more dimension to the mystery that researchers are still working to fully interpret. Thermal anomalies, areas where the temperature profile of the rock does not match what the known geology and depth of the surrounding material would predict, have been detected in specific sections of the site. Some of these anomalies align with the ventilation shaft positions and are consistent with the airflow dynamics of the ventilation system. Others do not have a clear explanation in the current structural model of the site. Whether they indicate the presence of additional unexcavated chambers, areas of different rock composition, or something else entirely is not yet determined. They are data points that the existing model of what Derinkuyu is and how it was built does not fully account for. And they are being added to a list of such data points that has been growing rather than shrinking as modern technology is applied to the site. There is a temptation, when a mystery like Derinkuyu resists explanation for long enough, to reach for dramatic answers that fill the explanatory gap with something large enough to match the scale of the puzzle. The question of who built the deepest levels of this city, when, and why, has attracted speculation ranging from the plausible to the genuinely extraordinary. Most of that speculation goes well beyond what the evidence supports, and serious researchers working on the site are careful to stay within what the physical data actually shows. What the physical data actually shows is already extraordinary enough without embellishment. A city carved from solid rock to a depth of at least 85 meters and apparently deeper. Ventilation engineering that reflects a sophisticated understanding of airflow dynamics in enclosed underground spaces. A water system integrated into the architecture at multiple levels. Stone doors precision engineered to seal individual corridors from the inside. A tunnel network connecting multiple sites across a regional geography that implies coordinated multi-generational construction planning. And now, beneath all of that, additional levels indicated by ground-penetrating radar that no human being in the modern era has entered or mapped. What scientists found when they went back is that Derinkuyu is bigger than they knew, deeper than they had mapped, more connected than they had documented, and more engineering sophisticated than any single historical culture in the accepted timeline of ancient Anatolia has been convincingly shown to have been capable of building. The mystery did not get solved when they looked harder with better tools. The better tools showed them how much more mystery was waiting beneath the part they thought they already understood. Whatever is at the bottom of Derinkuyu has been sitting in the dark, undisturbed, for a very long time. And if the radar data is accurate, it is still down there, patient, waiting for someone to bring a light deep enough to reach it.